Hi, I'm Tim Tyler, and this is a video entitled Morality Classified. Codifications of proper behaviour in the form of moral systems are a widespread phenomenon among humans. They show signs of being complex adapted systems, and so it makes sense to adopt an adaptationist stance and to ask what morality is for, and whether or not it exists for the benefit of DNA genes, memes, or some combination of the two. The most common explanation in the evolutionary ethics literature is that morality helps facilitate cooperation by encouraging good behaviour, which often turns out to be mutually beneficial to the parties concerned. In this video, I'm not going to directly address the question of what morality is for, rather I will be considering a classification of some of the main roles which morality plays. And my classification will be basically into morality that's oriented towards making decisions, morality that's oriented towards manipulation of other people, and morality that's used for signalling purposes. First, morality in the context of making decisions. This is really the most common usage of the term. Moral systems advise individuals or groups on the right course of action to take. The idea is also applicable when modelling the behaviour of others. Most morality is prescriptive, rather than merely being descriptive. It does not necessarily describe the action that will be taken, but rather the action that should be. If should is rather a vague and nebulous term in this context, one might consider it as referring to what an agent would do if they knew that they were being watched by family and friends, and their behaviour was being recorded. Another common usage for morality and moral systems is to manipulate and control the behaviour of others. Morality is often expressed in negative language, which describes actions not to be taken. For example, thou shalt not commit adultery. Such prohibitions are frequently cited by people in order to prevent others from taking actions which they don't want to be taken. For example, if you feel your significant other is showing signs of interest in committing adultery and you want to stop them, then drawing their attention to moral authorities that claim that the act is wrong can sometimes be effective at reminding them about the possible negative consequences of their actions. Another similar situation occurs with the right to life and abortion issues. A man who wanted his pregnant partner to preserve their baby might draw on the right to life movements, literature and moral guidance in the hope of encouraging his partner to preserve his offspring. Another example concerns the copying of information. Those whose business is the creation and distribution of literature, music and movies often attempt to describe their productions as intellectual property. Using the term property in this way creates an analogy between information and physical goods. If people are convinced that information can be owned, then copying information without permission becomes a kind of theft, and theft is bad, and this results in more people paying for information. Next, a couple of examples of mass manipulation. Rich people frequently benefit from the failure of poor people to coordinate and stage a revolution. One of the tools they use to keep the poor in line is religion. By sponsoring religions that promote moral behaviour and helping them build places of worship and spread the word, the rich can help keep the poor in line. Several major religions bear the hallmarks of this. In Buddhism, happiness lies within. Material goods do not matter. If anything, they are attachments and sources of suffering. This makes Buddhism an excellent means of manipulating the poor by the rich. The poor will literally not care about their own possessions. In Christianity, material goods are not quite so demonised, though there's a parable about it being easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Rather, stealing is bad, and there are commandments that refer to not stealing and thou shalt not covet thy neighbour's ox. This latter commandment creates a thought crime, which, in conjunction with a surveillance-happy deity, stops people even thinking about stealing each other's stuff. Churches cost the rich good money to build, but they allow poor men to experience God's splendour while reminding them of God's power and majesty, so it may well be worth it. Moral behaviour is also commonly used as a form of signalling. Moral acts signal trustworthiness, encouraging future acts of reciprocal altruism. Trustworthiness is an important component of much mating behaviour, and signalling theories explain things like vegetarianism, and the message is something along the lines of, if an individual even cares about animals, think how much they'll care about their fellow humans. It's the same kind of thing with Greenpeace and Save the Whales protests. They send many kinds of messages, but they're along the lines of, if this is how much I love even whales, just think how much I'd love a fellow human. The signal should be difficult to fake if they're to be credible. Moral acts are often themselves expensive to perform and so signal their value implicitly, but other trappings of morality are not so difficult to come by. Anyone can wear a religious symbol around their neck, for example. Hare Krishna devotees have come up with one solution to this problem. They wear bright orange robes and sport curious haircuts. Their outfits are not impossible to copy, but it is a badge of group membership that comes with some costs of its own. My last example of morality as a form of signalling comes in the form of utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is a favourite of moral philosophers, including Peter Singer and David Pearce. It's a very nice form of morality, and so signals unselfishness. To illustrate what I mean by that, biology says that we have a brain that rates us as the most important person on the planet, with offspring and other kin being ranked not far behind. Utilitarianism pays no attention to any of that. It doesn't make much effort to go with the grain of human nature. Some thinkers even extend it to animals, who are not kin and mostly can't reciprocate. Including animals in your moral system is a classic sign of signalling behaviour. So, it is not really biologically credible that many agents are utilitarians. Those with utilitarian tendencies will mostly have died out long ago without leaving many offspring. Utilitarianism's extreme niceness signals unselfishness. However, it is incredible and rather hard to believe. Most humans will simply not treat their own family and offspring in the manner which utilitarianism suggests. It goes against our biological tendencies too strongly. Utilitarianism's signalling component probably explains much of its appeal to moral philosophers. These fellows would like to have reputations for being extremely nice, and utilitarianism helps them send out that kind of signal. Lastly, memes. Morality, along with most human behaviour, is not transmitted down the generations by genes alone. There are also memes to consider, and the whole issue of cultural evolution. If you compare a caveman with a modern human, you will see that much morality is not in the genes, and that it is largely a cultural phenomenon. That is not to say that it is entirely cultural. Memes must often pay attention to the interests of genes in order to ensure their own transmission. However, culture is important. Above all else, morality and moral systems should spread effectively. To that end, morality should be small and easily expressed in words, and it should not be too difficult to use. So you see short slogans representing various moral truths, such as do unto others as others would do unto you, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Utilitarian slogan is the greatest good for the greatest number, and then there's things like don't hurt other people. Also, stories are a good way of spreading from one individual to another. A story is a natural, memorable, cultural phenomenon, and classic example there of a moral parable is the story of the Good Samaritan. Morality is often transmitted as part of a religious system, so it has to play well with other associated ideas as part of the religion. And as far as the content goes, it shouldn't be too biologically realistic. Morality should not exactly describe ordinary actions. A moral system that tells you to do what you're going to do anyway is not much use. But, on the other hand, morality should not be impossible to adhere to either. That just creates sinners. Like a motivating carrot, the idea of the right thing to do probably works best if it is held just out of reach. Enjoy.